Two giant scalps on the road in 3 weeks, a spot in the 8 entering the bye, and a month in their own beds. Things are looking up for Justin Longmuir's Dockers. Some bold selection moves from the coach, quicker ball movement that is much harder for opposition teams to defend. Darcy, Jackson, Mark II gets a tick. The small sample size on Nat Fyfe's return was good, and with some shaky teams above them, notably Hawthorn and GWS, a spot in the 8 seems Fremantle's to lose. West Coast did the controversial gold and black jumper proud for 3 quarters before being overrun by Geelong at Optus Stadium. Oscar Allen was back among the goals. Harley Reid shook off a tag and bedazzled. Liam Baker was everywhere. Ruben Ginbey held Jeremy Cameron for 3 quarters before the floodgates burst open. There was much to like without securing the big W. And now the Eagles head to Bunbury to take on North Melbourne, 18 v 17, in a matchup that will have West Coast fans believing they can secure the 4 points. Welcome to the West Sports Show. We are brought to you by Tab Touch. Got the touch? Download the Tab Touch app today. What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Joining me as normal on a Tuesday is Craig O'Donoghue, fresh from a trip to the Gold Coast. And we like what we saw, Cod, with the Dockers.
We did. I didn't like the weather, and I've come back to the same weather. It's smashing down here as it was smashing down on the Gold Coast. But geez, they were hard at the footy, weren't they, Freo? Like the way they attacked that contest was just full of merit, and it was such a difficult surface to play on. There was a VFL game that had been played beforehand, and it had cut the thing up. It just rained for days up there. So you're worried that it's a hard surface to play on. It's very slippery. The ball doesn't bounce much. It's going to be on the ground. How will they handle it? They're outstanding.
So 2 out of 3 weeks, 2 of the toughest road trips in the AFL now, Western Sydney and the Gold Coast. You know, the Darcy-Jackson experiment, phase 4 or whatever it is, Mark 1, small sample size, worked. Nat Fyfe brilliantly used as a sub for 1 quarter, 7 possessions. Both selections were hotly debated leading into the game, but you've got to have to say a tick on what we saw at the weekend. Much faster ball movement now from Freo, which is leaving opposition teams are finding it hard to defend. So I think given the momentum they've got, buys come at a perfect time. They've got a month in their own beds. It's really Freo's to lose now.
Yeah, 7-5 with a bye, and they've got 11 games to go for the year, and 7 of them are in Perth. So that includes a derby. That includes the North Melbourne game where North Melbourne are the home team. But they will travel to Victoria twice. That's Collingwood and Bulldogs they get there. And they've got Sydney and they've got Port Adelaide as their other away games. And really, the way that the Swans are going and the way Port are going, you'd expect the Dockers to be into those games, up their eyeballs. So they are in a really good position now to have a genuine crack in the second half of the year.
How did you see the Darcy-Jackson combo? Fascinated by, Darcy rucking off the bench. Jackson as a midfielder, used as a midfielder when not in that role.
Yes, the numbers are really interesting. So Jackson played 104 minutes, Darcy played 64, but Darcy had more hit-outs. He won 29 hit-outs to Jackson's 21. Their number of ruck contests was almost identical. Jackson had 1 more contest for the day than Darcy did, but Jackson did 17 of the centre bounces. Darcy only did 7. So it was pretty much Jackson was the ruckman for centre bounces, and Darcy was the ruckman around the grounds. What did you think? When you watched the game, did you think it worked or did you think it didn't work?
No, I thought it worked. I think in the conditions, I was dubious about whether it would, to be honest, but I think it did. The conditions, I'll be interested to see how it works in dry weather conditions and going forward, but you'd have to say that was a very successful campaign. Interesting, the use of the 2 players on the 2 Gold Coast ruckmen, particularly Jared Witts. I thought it fatigued him really well. So, I thought it was a masterstroke by the coach.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I agree. I looked at the game and thought that worked. That was perfect. But we talked the other week about how our eyes were saying that it wasn't working, and Justin Longmuir was saying the numbers are saying that it is. And the most fascinating part, I think, about the Jackson and Darcy debate now is we can no longer trust our eyes because Champion Data have come back to me and said it didn't work. The figures say on the weekend it didn't work.
Yeah.
So what if I told you that Gold Coast kicked more than half of their score during the 39 minutes that the 2 of them were on the ground?
Mm-hmm.
that paints a totally different picture because the scoreboard will ultimately decide whether this ruck combination works. So when only one ruckman was on the field, the Dockers outscored the Gold Coast by 35 points. When they were both on the field, the Gold Coast won the battle by 24 points. That's a dramatic difference. It's a 59-point swing. Now, you have to look deeper into the situation clearly because of the 5 goals that were kicked, there was no obvious trend. When you look at them, there was the first quarter, there was a stoppage on the wing, free kick to Gold Coast, advantage paid, players out of position. Tuke Miller drives it inside 50, ball gets over the back, Jed Walter crumbs and gets a goal. A few minutes later, Dockers had a 9v7 advantage and a stoppage inside 50. What happens? Ball gets out to one of the loose guys out the back for Gold Coast. He kicks a goal. Second quarter, another one. It's a boundary throw in at half forward. John Noble mungs a kick inside 50. It falls short. Ben Long takes a mark, kicks a goal. So none of these are directly related to necessarily having 2 ruckmen on the field. And in the last quarter, it wasn't Luke Jackson or Sean Darcy's fault that Bailey Banfield conceded a 50-metre penalty for getting inside the protected area and gave Sam Flanders a set shot from the top of the goal square. But that's another goal when 2 ruckmen run the field. And the last one was when Flanders kicked the freakish one out of the pocket off the ground. So, but it still is. The reality is that from the game, despite our eyes telling us that it worked, the numbers are different. And it's going to be interesting to see in a dry game into the future what it looks like, because it's not a great sample size at the moment or a great type of game, but the numbers are fascinating.
Well, the numbers, as you just pointed out, can lie, though. So it's not really directly relevant to the 2 ruckmen being on the ground. The number that doesn't lie, Cod, is the fact that they were ahead when the final siren rang.
Exactly,
so
yes.
That's the number I'm going with because that's really the only number that counts. A couple of big takeaways from me. Sam Switkowski now stringing together some really decent form. Really highly rated, one of the highly rated players in the competition in the role he plays. Pat Voss, I thought... been some sceptics about whether he plays it too hard on the edge. He has just come back from a suspension, but I really like the role he's played. I think he's taken a lot of pressure off Josh Tracy and Jai Amos, and I'm finding it hard to find a way he is out of this side at the moment.
It's impossible to see him out of the side because what he does isn't, he doesn't just play the game, he brings the energy to the other people around him. I mean, they almost put his peck out at one point, celebrating so hard with the way he goes. So, but that energy is just so important, especially in away games. Like, you just know that whatever happens, he's going to get everyone up and about. And yeah, I think he's a crucial cog to them now, which means that they're going to have to play those 8 talls, 3 tall defenders, 3 tall forwards and the 2 rucks if they decide to go with the 2 rucks. But I agree with you. Switkowski, best game for the year, and Voss just keeps on getting better and better and better.
And let's not forget, going into this game, I certainly picked Gold Coast, given that their record up there, minus Alex Pearce. I thought, gee, they're going to struggle down back. But they managed to get the job done, and never a better time for the bye now to get Alex Pearce through the bye, get him back in that side, and away we go. So I think things are looking a little, better than certainly peachy now compared to a month ago. Yeah,
absolutely. Pearce will be a really interesting one. So he's got the hot spot in his leg, and he got a big incident earlier on in the year. I think it was in the Barossa game. He was definitely sore and had a decent wound on his leg leading into the Melbourne game when they were over there for that week, and they were treating that quite seriously, trying to make sure that it didn't open up too much, either at training and during games with that wound. So then that's been sore ever since. And then they said, well, let's just go and have a look at how it is. The scans are saying it's fine. All of a sudden, the scan said this isn't a wound and a blow to the leg. This is a stress injury now, which is a real concern. And because he's had,
they can linger. Yeah, that's right. So they've got to get it right.
And he's got bad bones. Let's face it. He's had broken legs. He's had broken arms. So they're worried about his bones because they're not necessarily as strong as what some players are. So they're going to be really careful with this one and not throw him back out there in case what we saw happen last year with the broken arm, which was bring him back a week too early and it shatters and he's out for the rest of the year. I think he'll be one where they'll say, you're not coming back unless we are 110% certain that you're okay.
Overall, well done, Freo. Restored our faith in the season, Cods. We could have some September action after all.
Yeah, and they've still got Pearce to come back in, still got Hayden Young to come back in, Jago O'Meara, Michael Walters will all start.
And Fife will build on that quarter.
Exactly, so they become more experienced and have more depth and more options to pick from. I've loved what Justin Longmuir has done this year in the ability and the courage just to make big calls. Fife as a sub was a big call.
Yep. Well, it was because had someone gone down early, might have been in a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't got 4 quarters in him at the moment.
No, Darcy rucking, big call. Leaving Pearce out, big call, and moving Wagner from the back line to the midfield, big call. Playing all these tools, massive calls. So he's had the courage to make decisions. He hasn't just said, let's just stick with what we know. He's tried things and it's working.
And let's not forget Cooper Simpson also out of that team, who played a really key role in across the half-back line. Across town, Cod. It was
You've just come back from training, haven't
crazy game. Yeah. First, I have just come back from training at the Eagles. I just want to talk about the game itself, though. It's just for 3 quarters. I mean, they were right in this, up to their necks, West Coast, 11 points down at 3-quarter time. Ruben Ginbey, I felt so sorry for post-game. He had done an immaculate job for 3 quarters, kept Jeremy Cameron to a goal. And there were quite a few entries in there. So it was a good job he'd done. And then coughs up 4 in the last quarter, so it ends up with 5 goals. So it just shows you footy's played over 4 quarters. It did open up a bit the game in the last quarter. So it was unfortunate for him, but certainly beats the 9 goals he coughed up in round 24 last year. So I'm really pleased that McWalter stuck with him. And I thought it was a bit of a win for them, even though they didn't get the 4 points. Oscar Allen, 4 goals, first half, looked really good. Looks more comfortable back forward now. I thought it was one of Liam Baker's best games. And Harley Reid. Harley Reid with a hard tag on him for a lot of the game, managed to break free. And I think it was more back to the Harley that we saw in the first half of last year. So I thought they were very good signs.
I thought the interesting thing with Harley, I thought he started the game with a lot of situations where he handballed quickly. Like he'd get the ball, he was under pressure, and he didn't try to take that extra step or didn't run on afterwards. It was one effort. Then you got that goal where he kicked it inside 50, charges down, and the second effort comes and he kicks the goal and then does the wild.
But do you think he's adjusting
celebration
to the tempo of the game now a bit more, and for what he can do and his obviously great strengths and his weaknesses?
Yeah, I reckon he's remembered what he was as a footballer because I reckon he forgot what he was amid all of the fighting with players, all of the free kicks, all of the frustration and knowing that he's not fit enough because of his pre-season. I reckon the weekend was a sign that he remembers what the real Harley Reid looks like, which is multiple efforts, get forward, kick goals, go for hangers. If you're under pressure, get the ball out and then use your pace to get through and go for the next one, because we hadn't seen that because he was probably in his own mind going, I haven't got the tank to get through this entire game. Now he knows he does, so he can burst and he can do different things here and there. And I think that's the sign of what Harley Reid could be in the second half of the year, now that he's built his fitness up. And that's why Eagles fans should be really excited to see what the real version of Harley Reid was versus the one which we saw at the start of the year.
I thought some encouraging signs from the ruckman too, Matt Flynn. I think took a hang and then follow up, repeat, marked it off the kick. Made a couple of poor choices too. Cross goal, cough one up a turnover where he probably should have gone the top of the square. But I thought there were some encouraging signs for him too, and for the whole team really. I think that 43-point loss was 90 points not so long ago. So I think there's definitely a turn for them.
They were in the game for a lot
longer. Yeah, well, they're in the game for, I'd say, 3 and a bit quarters. And I think encouragingly for them, every time Geelong pulled sort of high 20 points up, and you thought, this is the game now, they'd find a way back in. So I think they're really encouraging signs. Did it a couple of times. So, well done to the Eagles. They're on the right path. I have just come from training. Really funny scenes down there because obviously Tom McCarthy and Jacob Newton, who were drafted last Wednesday, they've just come across. Clearly their jumper numbers. Well, they're meant to be wearing 45 for McCarthy and 46 for Newton. Clearly they haven't arrived. They're all running around in 41. So there was McCarthy and Newton and Sandy Brock all running around with number 41 this morning. So it was quite comical actually. But I'll tell you, Newton looks a good size. He looks AFL ready, as does McCarthy. McCarthy, we got a bit of a look at the weekend playing for the West Coast Waffle team against Swan Districts. So I'd expect them to get some footy in the second half of the year, to both make their AFL debuts. So good luck to them. Jamie Cripps out in the track and Matt Owies. So Cripps pretty much did everything. Owies was more light running, a few kicks. So they're about 2 weeks away, I think, those two. Certainly that's how they were listed 3 weeks away last week. So we anticipate that. Jeremy McGovern made an appearance just at the start, first half hour with his tracksuit top on, did a few run-throughs. He's still in the concussion protocols. We don't have a date for that yet, but I can only assume it's all about some repeat scans, getting that panel together, giving him a bit of time.
You need information.
And you need more information than just to rush into it because it's a very big decision. So, but it's always a bit warmer when he's out there with the boys, you know.
With McCarthy, 26 touches in his first game running off halfback in the waffle. Would you bring him in straight away and say, learn your way in AFL? Or would you say, no, as good as you've been playing in the VFL and your form's good there and you've proven it translates into waffle, you need to learn more about the club before you can and your teammates before you play?
Well, this isn't last year or the year before where they sort of were forced to rush these players in to get a quick look at them. I don't think anyone really deserves to come out of that team. So I would actually give him a couple of weeks or at least one more week in the waffle. Get to know your teammates. I mean, today was really their first training session. So, you know, I mean, you can't – I think they've got the luxury now of a little bit of a look at them before they rush them in. And
they're playing in Bunbury this week. So if you're going to give a guy his first game, do you give it in an environment which would feel similar to him from an atmosphere perspective to a VFL or a waffle game?
Pretty good call, actually.
Or do you wait and let him have the lights and spectacular action of Optus Stadium the week after?
Well, it could be on the road too, but I'm going to go lights action of Optus. Let's talk about Bunbury. So they'll train on Thursday. They'll head down there on Saturday. They'll do a captain's run on the Saturday, play on the Sunday against North Melbourne in that relocated Roos home game. It's going to be windy. Certainly right now it's going to be wet. What do you anticipate, Reid, the size of the ground? The wind is going to be hard to overcome. And, of course, they have the pre-season game to draw on.
So I've done the stats on not just the pre-season game.
But the stats, you're prepared today?
I've got the Southwest Football League stats as well. Okay. Because they play it at that venue. And regardless of whether you're a league footballer in the Southwest Footy League or whether you're an AFL footballer, the wind does the same thing for you regardless, and it blows to one end. So during the pre-season, the scoring end, it was 15 goals 14 to 5 goals 6 when West Coast played North Melbourne. So it was obvious.
So which end is this?
I don't know. I think it was the right-hand end of the screen. I could be wrong, but regardless, the end that was being scored at was
15 goals to 5.
15-14 to 5 goals 6, so 29 scoring shots to 11.
Okay.
In the Southwest Footy League this year, again, I don't know which end's the scoring end, but the scoring end is 9 goals 6 to 4 goals 10 in one game, 12 goals 10 to 8 goals 8 in another, 16-13 to 10 goals 4, and then 12 goals 9 to 9 goals 8. So across that's 4 Southwest Footy League games and a pre-season match. The total points at the scoring end is 436 compared to 252 down the other end. So when you win the toss, kick with it. And when you kick with it, you'd better make the most of it because that's going to tell the difference between winning and losing.
You're kicking with it, are you?
I'm kicking with it,
I'm
absolutely.
always kicking against it.
Are you?
I
Why?
like coming home with the wind.
Like coming home with the wind. Yeah, I still remember when Trent Cotchin kicked into it in the final against Port Adelaide back in 2013 or 14 at the Adelaide Oval, and they were 6 or 7 goals down at quarter time, and it was all over. Now, I'd always kick with it because I reckon you can clog it up a little bit afterwards, and if you get the score on the board, so you can defend late, I reckon. But yeah, the wind is going to be interesting. Like it looks like it's going to be a light wind. It says according to the Weather Bureau, and a sunny day. But anything can happen between now and then. But the information there makes it very, very clear that one end of the ground will be scoring and one end of the ground will be tough.
As a proud major sponsor of the Fremantle Football Club, Woodside has accepted the challenge of supporting local footy at all levels, from grassroots to greatness, so it can thrive throughout WA. Woodside, Australia's leading energy company. A couple of takeaways from the other games. Really sad scenes in the GWS game with Callum Ward, and we now know rupturing his ACL. I'm all for the Giants media department. I love what they do. I thought it was a bit tasteless. The tweet after the game about Taranto, with a big win in his old GWS livery, I thought that was a bit poor, really. They won the game, and it was, I guess, ironic given that Callum Mills caught the plane home with the Richmond team because his family lives in, his wife and children live in Melbourne.
Yes, it's amazing that he's doing that.
And Taranto was on the plane and drove him home to his home address. So just... Look, I'm all for a bit of fun. Let's have it. And they are very good at it. And generally they do a good job. But just have a think through what you do.
That would have been pre-planned, I reckon. Yeah. They wouldn't have even remembered that they'd done it by the end of the game. And, and away you go. Yeah, you do have to be careful at times.
Who wins the flag if finals are played right now?
Collingwood.
I agree.
Yeah, but Collingwood finals aren't played right now. But right now Collingwood is playing the best footy. But what we know is Brisbane weren't going to win the flag at this point of last season either. So... the finals You win finals by being healthy and in form in September. And there's a long time to go between now and then. And we saw last year Fremantle were third with a month of the season left. Injuries arrived. They fell apart. So you need to be healthy. That's the most important thing going to happen from here. Have your players healthy.
What I liked about Collingwood's performance against my boys and Hawthorn, just back-to-back losses, a few concerns creeping in. It's not outrageous, though. I think Hawthorn has played the last two premiers in successive weeks on the back of a trip to Darwin to play Gold Coast where they performed pretty well. So not ready to throw the baby out of the bathwater just yet. But I think Collingwood just elite at thwarting that transition game at Hawthorn. Hawthorn just couldn't get it really through inside 50, and when they did, they'd really clogged it up. So they set up so well behind the ball. Hawthorn won the contest numbers at the weekend, but it's been a worry the last month, and certainly their tackling numbers were a concern at the weekend, whereas Collingwood just... I mean, I think at the moment they're best at scoring from inside 50s and preventing scores from inside 50s. So they're going really well at both ends, and lots to like about them. A few of the other games, I thought Adelaide v Sydney, really interesting. Adelaide's win there. I picked them, but I didn't think they'd win by that margin. Dean Cox, what do you make of late night finish, early rise the next morning for a training session?
Yeah, so how you handle these scenarios is a really good indication of what you are as a coach. And you can do it in multiple different ways. Yeah. You can flog them on the track. You can cuddle them and say, look, we'll all be okay. You can get around the campfire and have a beer, or you can head down to the ocean and get really cold together. You've got to find a way to get everyone back as a united group. And I've got no doubt that they are losing a lot of games at the moment through heartbreak and the heartbreak of their grand final losses over recent years. If you get flogged in the grand final, you struggle to get over it. And remember, they lost by more than 100 points against Port Adelaide late last year, so there were signs then that they weren't going as well as we thought they were. And then they lose the grand final by 10 goals, and they've lost multiple games this year by big margins. And I reckon it gets to the point where your soul gets taken away from you. And do I want to commit as heavily to the next contest? Do I want to commit as heavily to my diet or to my sleep or to training and stuff when you don't feel like you're actually going to get there because you've been broken inside?
Yeah.
I think that's what's happening to them at the moment.
Well, you've made 2 grand finals in 3 years, and you've been smashed in both, and so you've invested so much of yourself into that process, and it's just been a horrible outcome. So it would be easy to take the easy route and just say, why do I bother?
Yeah,
really?
exactly.
So, what did you make of Wayne Miller's comments afterwards, the rabble? I'm not surprised it became a story, and I'm not surprised that the Adelaide CEO apologised, but I do feel a bit for Miller. When you listen to the comments, they were quite innocent. I mean, it's not the great language calling the opposition team a rabble, and they will use that in the future, but they were a rabble.
Yeah.
And I think if Sydney really wanted to make anything, and I don't think they have made a big deal of it, to their credit, I would take that language and I would say the players, he was right.
Exactly, because he was right. And I had no problem with it whatsoever. I thought he was as honest as the day is long. And we hear all the time when players are arguing out in the field with each other, opposition players say, we knew we had them then. Well, they knew they had Sydney because they weren't communicating appropriately and were leaving holes in their team and weren't like Sydney have been in the past. Now, there's nothing wrong with saying the truth. Let players say the truth. You don't need to apologise for that. That's absolutely ridiculous that they apologise. That's fear that they're going to have the Swans come back at them at some point. Stand up and say, no, we meant it. You were a rabble out there and we were better and we're going to go out there and try to win the flag this year and you're not. Just stop pandering to all the crap that goes on outside the game. Just you said something, stand by it.
We don't want robots, that's for sure. St Kilda v Melbourne, another great game from Cal Wilkie, who I think's in the All-Australian side right now. It's funny when you look at him, has not missed a game since his debut.
Bloody good player.
One of those players who just gets on a roll, just keeps playing. Plays hurt, obviously.
I thought that game told us more about Melbourne than it did St Kilda.
It did.
And one thing you do not do if you want to be a finals team and a genuine finals team is sell one home game. That's a loss to GWS 2 years ago, a loss to Fremantle last year, a loss to St Kilda now, and that's cost them a significant ladder position each time and momentum in their season. If you sell your game,
Yeah.
you better bloody well win it.
Yeah, well, obviously North Melbourne sold some games, but they're in a very different position to Melbourne.
Sell them when you're down the bottom. Don't sell it if you think you're a good team.
The other thing that came out, that was the Cozzy Pickett tag. So Marcus Windhager, a fantastic game. He's claimed some big scalps over the journey so far. But I thought that was telling. I mean, Jake Melksham's been really good for them up forward. But if you get hold of Cozzy, I think you probably get hold of Melbourne's ability to score.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good assessment, I reckon.
Yeah. Cod, my favourite time of the week, the Thirsty Camel mailbag. This week's special, Jack Daniel's Tennessee Whiskey, 700 mils, only $54.99. This week we'll be giving away a $50 digital voucher, thanks to Thirsty Camel. Get your questions into TheWestSport at wanews.com.au. Please include your mobile number at the bottom of your email, as we'll send you a digital voucher if you're a weekly winner. Hi, Quarters and Cod. I love the Eagles bespoke jumper they used on the weekend. Now they should rebrand themselves with that jumper and call themselves the Perth Eagles. That's from Michelle. I didn't mind the jumper. I thought everyone was being a bit precious with the calls of the why can you wear basically a state jumper when you don't represent the state. There's another team that also represents the state, but I thought they were being a bit precious over that. I didn't mind it.
I hated it.
Mm-hmm. Why?
Oh, the opposite. Yeah, I agree with people who said you are a blue and gold team.
Mm-hmm. But it is WA Day weekend, and I think if you can do it, and let's be honest, the clubs have all sorts of away strips and alternative jumpers, so I don't see the issue.
Yeah, I think people would have an issue if Fremantle wore a black and gold jumper as well. You know, and we saw West Coast more than a decade ago wear the actual state jumper at one point as well, and that caused issues. I think you got to stick with the colours of your club are too important. And I think to take away, I wouldn't like seeing Adelaide wear the South Australian jumper. I wouldn't like to see a Victorian team wear the big V.
They basically do wear the South Australian jumper.
But it's their colours have been their colours since the start. It's not the actual state jumper. It's too much of a change to go from blue and gold to black and gold. So yeah, I didn't think that's the way you should be going as a footy club. And even just, in 10 years' time, people will look back and go, who was that team? If you're looking at that team from behind with a jumper and a photo of it, you go, who was that who was playing? I think you got to stick to what people know, and your colours matter.
I loved it. I thought it was great. And merch went well, apparently. So there you go.
Well, that will make sure they do it again. Merch went well. Merch matters to clubs
for one
alike.
game, and they want this WA Day fixture, so I think they'll continue to wear it. And I say good luck to them, but I take your point. G'day, gents. Thought I'd float an idea for the Freo ruck dilemma and potential ruck merry-go-round come trade period. There are whispers of Darcy being the one that does potentially depart the Dockers at the end of the year, and seeing as how Geelong has previously held interest in him as well as having a good history with managing injury-prone players, thought it would be a good opportunity for Freo to regain former NGA talent Mitch Edwards, along with a first-rounder in a Darcy trade. Is the price right? Keen for your thoughts. That's our friend, the Pilbara Peanut.
Well, we haven't seen what Mitch Edwards is actually like as an AFL player yet. He was a pick early 30s for them. So there was a lot of promise for him when he was coming through. But if you're going to trade Darcy, you'd want to get the absolute best deal you can, I would have thought, and have guarantees on what you're getting. And one first-round pick and Mitch Edwards, I reckon, might be a bit light for what Fremantle would need at this point.
Yeah, let's have a look at what the second half of the year looks like as well before we make up our minds on that one. This one from Andrew from W. Hi, just listened to your podcast from May 29th. This is last Thursday. Couldn't agree with you more, Mitch. No more rule changes. Leave the game alone. There's a lot of lazy journalism with suggested rule changes that aren't thought through, like don't pay marks for kicks that don't go forward. The way to stop backwards and sideways kicks is to stop flooding back and man up your opponents. Anyone who wants to promote a rule change should be asked what the negative consequences is from the change. There is always at least one. If they can't list at least one, they haven't thought it through.
I've seen a lot of rule changes over the years. It's fair to say when I was in.
What about last touch? Days. I think that's what we were referring to.
Yeah, I think last touch.
Not last touch, last kick or last handball.
Last handball out of bounds. What that would do is make players not kick the space. They'd be kicking to a pack. But I do think what will happen is if they know it can come off hands, it will give them an out where they'll just kick to someone as close to the boundary line as possible, who will then knock it over the line. So. It does seem to work, though, in the SANFL. There's been a lot of good reviews about that because players are more prepared to go through the corridor. So I think the coaches would need to be asked on how they would handle it and what their tactic would be if the last touch came. last touch rule did come in, but it does feel like at the moment, I think it's pretty easy to read what's going to happen with deliberate out of bounds.
Yeah, I do too, and I actually like it. I think it's added a really good dimension to the game. I think umpires generally get it right, and I think the crowd's into it.
Yeah, it adds atmosphere to it, that's for sure, as opposed to knowing, the ball's going to dribble out, it's going to be our free kick. The willy won't-y element of it. Is the umpire going to play? Yes, it is. Yes. That's important.
I wouldn't mind
drama. We love drama.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing it trial perhaps it's already in the Sandful.
And it's in the women's game.
Yeah, but in the lower level competitions through between the arcs, last kick or last handball out of bounds, I wouldn't mind them seeing trialled. I don't think you can trial. I'm not big on trialling during preseason games. I think preseason games have to be the rules you're playing in the competition proper.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to see them really lock down on is I'd totally change the way stoppages are set up. It takes too long for the boundary umpire to bring the ball back in after a throw-in. That's because of the nomination situation. Same for throwing it up. It should just be very, very, very simple. The number one ruckman and the number two ruckman, the umpires know who they are before the game. If it's not going to be them, then you have to nominate yourself. But if it's going to be Sean Darcy versus Jared Witts, then we know that they're there. If Jackson's there, then Darcy has to say, I'm the ruckman, because you're not allowed to shepherd the player out. But most of the time, it's pretty obvious. It's Max Gawn versus Tristan Cherry. Yeah. They're standing there. It's not going to be someone short who's going to go up in the ruck. So if the ruckmen are doing the ruck work, it's fine. Chuck the ball in the air as quick as you can. Let the game get going.
I like Mick Malthouse's column last week, actually, trying to save some time in games and not having such long quarters. And I think one of them is just, as you say, just throw the ball up. And I'm for not nominating. I mean, if there's a third man up, it's a free kick. But if there's not, just go up. Whoever's there, just get on with it.
Get on with it as fast as you can.
I think so. So,
and if the ruckman isn't there, bad luck.
That's right. Yeah.
Bad luck.
Hey, Quarters and Craig, would any Fremantle or West Coast players be in your All-Australian team at the midway point of the season? That's Ben from Karrinyup. Thoughts?
West Coast would have none. If we're talking squad rather than teams.
Let's talk squad.
Yeah, if we talk squad, so I think Jordan Clark is definitely in there in the squad for the back line.
I've got Zorko Martin, Wanganeen Millara, and Jordan Clark, sort of question mark. I've got them for the halfback.
Yeah, and you got Lockie Ash and Lockie Whitfield and Bailey Dale are also having really good years, and Jack Sinclair in there. So there's a lot
you can slot some of them into the back pocket too.
There's a lot of spots up for grabs in that back line with players playing well. But Jordan Clark is definitely in career best form. So I reckon that. What about you? You got Jackson in there as a ruckman?
Well, I got Max Gawn as first ruck, but I've got Jackson in the squad, certainly for a spot on the bench as the second ruck. I think he's dynamic. He does a lot more around the ground. So I've got him in there at the moment. Probably Tristan Cherry's the other ruckman.
Darcy Cameron,
really and Darcy Cameron's been really good too. So
I don't think they'll go two rucks this year. I think it's a one ruck situation. But
then does Jackson qualify? I mean, that's why
that would be the interesting thing.
Well, we saw him play midfield at the weekend as well, so I'd have him on the bench at the moment. The other one I'd have in there, who's certainly building, is Shea Bolton. I'd have him right up there, and I'd have probably Andy Brayshaw.
Andy Brayshaw and Caleb Sarong. Yeah. I think both of them deserve to be in the midfield mix. Yeah, and Bolton, he's in an interesting position, Bolton, for that forward line, because Jamie Elliott is a lock as one of the smaller forwards. So
Jack Higgins would be a good case too.
Yeah, and then you got Rankin and Cozzy Pickett and Toby Green.
Cozzy Pickett.
It's a tough situation with that small group. So what Bolton needs to do is make up for the fact that his first 3 or 4 games weren't great as he was building his fitness, and keep playing like he is now for the rest of the season, because the other guys have got a bit of a jump on him right now.
Yeah, so it's a pretty good side though. I mean, you've got Collins or Taylor at fullback. You mentioned Bailey Dale. Bailey Smith, I think, is just in. He's just a lock in that team. Zach Merritt, I think, is a lock in that team. You'd probably have to think about Ed Richards as a lock in that team.
Bont's flying as well. Nick Dacos.
Bont's probably hasn't missed a lot of footy, so he might get there, but I'm not sure just yet. Nick Dacos is a lock. You'd clearly have Jeremy Cameron and Ben King and Jesse Hogan in the mix.
And then you got Jordan Dawson in the midfield as well.
Pretty easy.
It's going to be hard to get into this team.
And McCluggage and Anderson and Zorko and Rao. So really, really tough. But I don't admire the job of an All-Australian selector. It's pretty hard.
You're just going to get yelled at as an All-Australian selector. That's the only guarantee that you will get told you did something wrong.
You can't fit them all in, mate. Just a question with that notice, just when we leave that, that's our last mail for this Tuesday. What do you think of the change up at the AFL? So splitting the football department, bringing in Greg Swan, and with probably with that COO position still to be filled. So Tom Harley seems to be the front runner at the moment. We know they've reached out to Simon Garlick.
Happening.
Simon Garlick has told the board he's not moving.
And he's said that for a long time. Like he was never actually a contender. Other people were talking about him. He's never been.
The AFL would like to have him back there, but yeah, he may not want to do that.
Doesn't want to leave Fremantle at the moment. Doesn't want to move into state at the moment.
So I think Greg Swan, given his background, Lions, Collingwood, Carlton, I think it's a really good pick, really good choice. I don't mind the fact that they've split that position. It's a really big job for one person to handle. Clearly, Laura Kane couldn't, so I don't mind the fact they've split it. The next appointments, I think, is significant. So they've got to get that right. It looks like Tom Harley is the front runner. And, of course, we're also speculation about the chair, Richard Goyder, whether he gets another turn, with Andrew Pridham from Sydney seemingly the front runner there.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me with Greg Swan coming in and the changes in Laura Kane's role was how on earth did they ever expect one person to do what they're getting Laura and Greg Swan to do? So you're talking about running an AFL competition, an AFLW competition, the under-18s,
the MRO,
umpiring, concussion, tribunal. You go on and on and on. Law changes. Surely you have one person just focusing on.
I thought exactly the same thing when they
got to look after
it.
the game. Like if you've got your fingers in all these different pies, you're not actually committing to making one thing great, and that's why all these problems have been bobbing up because you've only got a certain amount of hours in your week. No wonder there's been so many problems over the time. I think the AFL will work a lot better when there's two people splitting these roles and they can genuinely focus on what they need to focus on rather than constantly be chasing their tail.
Seems Greg Swan's portfolio now is a bit top-heavy.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Yeah, but at least you know that Laura's making sure that the game is being administered the right way and that the games are set up perfectly. And then Greg Swan can look after all the dramas that are going on at different points and build relationships with clubs. If you consider you did a 50-hour week as an example or a 60-hour week, whatever it would be for in the AFL, if you spend half an hour every single week speaking to the 18 clubs, there's a full day gone. And then you've got to follow up on those conversations, then ring people back. So you probably lose 2 days just by getting in touch with all the 18 clubs. How on earth are you getting everything else done?
No. So I think we whack the AFL from time to time, but I think it's a good move, and hopefully it pays dividends.
Yeah, and I think Greg Swan will be really good. Laura Kane's good at what she does. So I think she's copped a lot of criticism for the fact that things aren't running smoothly, but I do feel that she was in a no-win position where there was just too much that she'd been asked to do, and too much she thought she was able to do, when I don't think anyone would have been able to do that portfolio with what was on her plate.
And also Tanya Hosh leaving as well, which is a significant portfolio now, social inclusion. So, we'll see what happens down that path. You have been listening to The West Sport Show. We've been brought to you by TabTouch. Got the touch? Download the TabTouch app today. What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Remember, you can watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube Music. Leave us a rating and a review, and don't forget to follow this podcast so you don't miss an episode. Cod, thank you once again for an enlightening Tuesday.
Let's hope we can stay dry, Quarters.
Well, I doubt it, but everyone out there, stay dry.